Hey listeners, thanks for dropping in. I'm Christy.
And I'm Melissa, and this is Buried Motives, where we dig deep into the details of some of the most gruesome
Dirtbag murderers. Hey listeners,
Welcome back to Buried Motives.
thank you for joining us again today. Or if it's your first time, welcome.
I'm excited to talk about this case today.
I'm excited for you to talk about this case today.
Christy didn't want to talk about it.
It wasn't that I didn't want to talk about it, but my husband had suggested this case for me to do. And the more I got into it, I was like, I don't know how I feel about this case. So I wasn't quite sure how to go about it. I told Melissa about it and she was like, oh, I'll do it. And I'm like, great. So I do know a lot about this case, but I'm excited to be able to discuss it and see what Melissa brought to the table for us.
Today we're going to be talking about Kai the Hatchet Wielding Hitchhiker, which Netflix just released a documentary 2 months ago.
Maybe some of our listeners have seen it. That's what sparked our curiosity in it, was that Netflix special.
And I'm curious if they have seen it, how did they feel about it? Because like you, Christy, this case left me with a lot of conflicting emotions.
Yeah, I wasn't 100% sure what to think, and I'm usually pretty opinionated when it comes to different cases.
So this is one of those cases that I hope our listeners really do comment a lot with us on our social feeds.
Yeah, we want to know what you think.
There's lots of different places to insert opinions about. The documentary all started with a YouTube video.
Good old YouTube. What would we do without it?
So on February 1st, 2013, KMPH news reporter Joseph Galfy got the story of his career when he got moved up from the sports desk to report on a live story that was unfolding on the corner of McKinley and Marks in West Fresno. Around 2 p.m., the news van raced to get the story of a crazy man who had just purposely ran into a Pacific Gas and Electric Company truck, pinning a worker. The story they got from bystanders who had witnessed the scene was not something that they could have ever guessed. Jet Simmons McBride, a 54-year-old, had steered his car purposely into the utilities vehicle, going about 5 to 10 miles per hour, all while claiming to be Jesus Christ and yelling racial slurs.
So wild.
It seems so bizarre.
It's a crazy way to start, and it's just going to get crazier.
This guy believed his purpose in life was to rid the earth of all Black people.
Ugh.
Jet had a history of mental health issues, and in the past few weeks had lost touch with reality. He had been traveling across the country because he believed that he was supposed to stop a terrorist attack that was about to occur at the Super Bowl. He had left his dog Zoe and threw out his cell phone twice along the road so that he couldn't be traced. Along the way, he had been sleeping very little. He believed that any white trucks on the road were the Illuminati following him.
Oh man, what a recipe for disaster.
He had picked up a hitchhiker, Kai, in Bakersfield, and the two of them had discussed God, Walmart, and numerology as they traveled north up Route 99 in Jet's black Oldsmobile. When they reached Fresno, the car was overheating, and so while they waited for the engine to cool down outside a recycling plant, the two men who had gotten along well during their trip shared a joint together. Jet's fragile psyche did not handle the addition of drugs well. Kai, the hitchhiker, would later joke that Jet was not able to handle his drugs. Jet started to believe that he was Jesus Christ and was now on a new mission. It was that belief that led him to drive, blank-faced, into Rashawn Neely, the PG&E worker who had just been out doing his job. Jet made no attempt to move the steering wheel at all as bystanders watched him drive his vehicle into this man's legs, pinning him between the two vehicles.
Oh, I cannot even imagine that pain. What a dirtbag.
Bystanders rushed to Rashawn's aid. One of them, Tanya Baker, a former nurse, tried to stop Jet from moving the injured man and came face to face with him. He didn't take too kindly to her interference, and he believed that she was trying to thwart his mission. So he grabbed her, putting her into a bear hug kind of hold, and then started beating her on the back and on the head, all the while trying to kiss her.
Oh, what a creep.
That seemed to be a trigger for Kai, Jet's passenger. He entered the scene, intervening, jumping out of the car and stopping the attack on the woman by subduing Jet. It was Kai's account of this situation that the reporter and cameraman captured and later posted on the internet that would result in his social media fame, and some would say would lead to murder.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable how quickly this went viral.
But we'll let our listeners be the judge of whether they think it was the video and the fame that led to murder or if it was something else. It's a case that invokes a lot of emotion. And so did the interview that Kai gave.
I think part of it is people love to be shocked, and it's pretty shocking.
We'll post a link to it on our Facebook page so you can find the video really easily. But it is a shocking video. As the reporter was getting the lowdown about the scene that Jet had created, everyone was telling him about this hero of the day that had come to the aid of Tanya and beat the crazed Jet off of her. And he just happened to notice Kai, who was still casually wandering around the street just off to the side of the scene. Kai had just finished being interviewed by the police. Kai was not hard to spot. He was wearing a red sweatshirt and carried a hiking backpack with long, flowing dark hair. A tangled mass that was held back by a bandana covered in peace signs. The reporter asked Kai, "Are you one of the heroes?" And Kai confirms that he is one of them. When asked what happened today, before Kai launches into his side of the story, he turns to the camera, looks straight into it, and shares his philosophy about life. He says, quote, "Before I say anything else, I want to say no matter what you've done, you deserve respect. Even if you make mistakes, you're lovable. And it doesn't matter your looks, skills, or age, your size, or anything. You're worthwhile. No one can take that away from you."
It's a really charismatic thing to say.
It is. And the way that he delivers it is, you're thinking like, yeah, this guy is so loving.
Yeah. He reminds me of 1976 hippie love movement.
And that's what he looks like too.
He does.
After imparting his worldly wisdom, he launches into his story about how he intervened and stopped Jet from hurting anybody else. He said he removed the keys from Jet's car, and when he saw Jet holding Tanya so tight that he feared that he was choking her, Kai reacted by grabbing his hatchet and started to beat Jet off the woman. Using the back of his hatchet, Kai delivered 2 blows to his head and then uses the sharp side to deliver 1 more blow.
Oh, I can't even imagine how that would feel.
Well, the way that Kai describes this scene is so memorable. He tells everyone how he was worried that Jet would snap the woman like a pencil, and then he had to smash the man in the back of the head to stop the attack.
And he's so animated while he's telling this. He's full on showing the actions of how he hit this guy with his hatchet.
Yeah, he's using his whole body to tell the story. The 300-pound Jet was effectively subdued until authorities would arrive. Luckily, everyone would survive this ordeal, and Kai, the hatchet-wielding hitchhiker, had been born. From that single interview that Kai gave, he became an internet sensation, literally overnight.
Mm-hmm.
The reporter posted it, and then in the morning, there was 250,000 views. But Kai wasn't who he claimed to be. The name he had given the reporter was a false one, just like many other names that he had made up before, like Edward Carl Nicodemus, or any others that had come to mind when he wanted a new identity, or felt that he needed to escape his true one. Behavioral analysts have analyzed the video that reporter posted on YouTube, and from his body language, they surmised that Kai presented this made-up persona that was a protective front for who he really was. Kai was born Caleb Lawrence McGillivary on September 3rd, 1988, to Shirley Stormberg and Gail McGillivary. Caleb spent his early life in Red Deer, Alberta, and was the second of 4 children. His family held treaty status with the Opaskwayak Cree Nation in Manitoba. His father was a residential school survivor, and his parents divorced when he was 4. And when his parents divorced when he was 4 years old, his dad lost the custody battle. His paternal grandmother recalled that Caleb as a young child was a very good little boy to her, despite having a rough childhood. Under the care of his mother, Caleb moved to St. Paul, about 2 hours northeast of the capital of Alberta. There, his behavior became very problematic for his mother. As a child, he displayed erratic and very concerning behavior. He had serious antisocial behavior, even as a toddler. He had been a difficult child for his mom, but it just kept getting worse and worse. There can be lots of difficult behaviors that children experience as toddlers, and then they grow out of it. But it seemed like Caleb just never grew out of his temper tantrums.
More like he grew into them.
Mm-hmm. As a child, he killed pet hamsters and attempted to set the family home on fire.
Ooh.
Shirley claims that Caleb was a very smart, creative boy that was full of energy. But in order to keep Caleb safe, she had to lock him in his room for short periods of time. In the mornings, before she deemed it was time to get up out of bed, she would lock him in his room to prevent him from getting into things or getting out of the house. This is not how Caleb remembered these times.
Mm-hmm.
He claimed that it was outright neglect and abuse, where he would be left for hours locked in a room with dark blankets over the windows, saying that he was locked in a cage and for 4 years treated like an animal. Caleb says that he was raised in a fundamentally Christian cult that just wanted to control him.
And it's hard to say what the truth is. Maybe it lays somewhere in between.
And that's my guess. I can appreciate both sides of this story.
But I don't know if that's your lasting solution.
No, not at all.
Being locked in a room is not giving him the kind of help that he's going to need to work through those things. So you can see how this has kind of created Kai as the internet knew him.
Mm-hmm. Caleb's cousin, Jeremy McGillivary Wolf, remembers as a child Caleb being put into a room with dark blankets over the windows, blocking out the view of other children that were playing outside. And that on one occasion he too was forced into this room but escaped. So there is some collaboration more to Caleb's side of the story.
Oh, if a cousin is saying it, then yeah, I would tend to believe Caleb on that one.
Yeah.
Because what parent wants to admit, yeah, I abused my kid and locked them in the room and just left them there.
Right. But Jeremy also does acknowledge that Caleb was prone to violent fits of rage. One minute he would be perfectly fine, and the next, Caleb would explode. And these explosions were unpredictable. Caleb had difficulty deciphering if people were laughing with him or at him, and would go into a rage if he felt he was the butt of the joke. Caleb's behavior prompted his family to reach for outside help. Caleb's mom said that professionals had suspected ADHD, but that it was difficult to understand just what was going on with this young little boy. From his preteens to the age of 18, Caleb received treatment for his mental health difficulties and was in and out of treatment facilities and foster care. These care facilities were not always the best places. Gil would later say that the environment was less than idyllic. It lacked education, and Caleb had said to him that he was physically and mentally abused in these facilities.
Oh, that's sad.
At one of these residential treatment facilities, Bosco Homes in Strathcona County, a worker remembered Caleb as being a really articulate kid who read a lot. This facility ended up closing its doors years after Caleb left because of community safety concerns when 2 14-year-old residents of its program ran away and killed 2 random community members.
Ooh, that's dark.
So that just gives you a little bit of insight into what kind of kids were spending their time in these treatment facilities.
Yeah.
In 2008, just a year before these 2 teenagers ran away and killed community members, the facility had recorded more than 300 runaways or attempts of troubled teens trying to get away from the facility. And the facility only held 80 youth.
Whoa.
It would seem that it was not a well-liked place.
No. Like, I'm curious as to what was actually going on there.
Well, according to Caleb, it was physical and mental abuse.
Huh.
Running away would be a theme in Caleb's life as well.
Well, it sounds like he grew up not really feeling like he had a safe place to be.
No, it sounds like he was in and out of treatment facilities, foster homes, and his own home. And he ran away from all of them.
Yeah, and he referred to his home as a cage, like he just felt trapped growing up.
On one occasion at 17, Caleb had hitchhiked through British Columbia, and there he had a devastating experience of being sexually assaulted.
Oh.
The man was charged, but never convicted of the crime.
Oh, that's so frustrating.
They knew who did it, but he never faced conviction. Caleb's father would later say that Caleb never recovered from this and had PTSD from the experience.
Oh, absolutely he would. And just to not even have that person convicted is just pouring salt in that wound. Such a slap in the face that so many of those perpetrators go free.
Yeah, never held accountable.
Yeah.
So after this experience, he did return to the treatment facility, and Caleb would then be discharged from his residential treatment program at the age of 18, now that he was considered an adult. And while he spoke 3 languages, was musically talented, and well-read, he had trouble making the transition to being an adult out on his own. Gil said that the treatment program just cut him loose and washed their hands of him. So even though they knew he had all of these difficulties, just because he was 18, he no longer was part of the program.
Yeah, he aged out. Now you're not our problem.
That's right. Around 2008, Caleb had settled in the White Ave area of Edmonton and was couch surfing and panhandling. The routine of a steady job and life was just too tedious for him. When he stayed at friends' homes, he was always open about his experiences and always seemed to not be too concerned about hiding his true self. If Caleb felt like howling like a wolf and acting erratically, then that's exactly what he did, much to the chagrin of neighbors of the places where he was staying.
I bet. So no impulse control.
None. People that met him felt that there was just something a little off about Caleb, but that he was mostly caring and had a positive outlook on life.
Yeah, he doesn't come across as super malicious.
No.
A wolf in sheep's clothing, maybe. Or is he even? I don't know.
And that's what I find so fascinating about this case is he this cold-blooded killer that he's made out to be? Or is he just so wrapped up in his mental health issues and is trying to protect himself and creating this persona that makes people believe he's this cold-blooded killer?
Yeah, this is a tough one to sort through.
I know I couldn't quite bring myself to calling him a dirtbag all the time.
I'm usually a little more easy with that, but we can definitely say he does some dirtbag things.
Oh, absolutely.
And behaves like a dirtbag.
Yes. And most people would say there was this dichotomy of his character where he would be really kind and generous, and then all of a sudden he would fly off the handle into a rage and act totally unpredictably and act outrageously, which is what you see in the video.
Yeah, you do. And it's funny that we're so hesitant to call him a dirtbag because it's like, if he quacks like a duck and he walks like a duck, he is a duck, right?
It's true.
And so he's doing all these dirtbag things. So maybe he's a dirtbag.
But his YouTube video claimed him a hero because he had saved this woman's life.
That is true.
So there was a lot of contradicting feelings surrounding Caleb and how he was interacting with the world. It sounds like there might have been a falling out with his brother around the time that Caleb was 22. He left Alberta and he visited his dad for Christmas in Ottawa, Ontario. And then he took to traveling the roads in 2011. Of Caleb's disappearance from their lives, his younger sister would say that one of the things with loving a free spirit is understanding that you've got to let them be a free spirit.
That's insightful.
Mm-hmm. But they just knew that this was kind of Caleb's makeup, that he didn't fit the mold. He wasn't going to do the same thing as everybody else, do the 9-to-5 job thing. It just wasn't him. Caleb's determination to be his free-spirited self and not care what others thought was noticed by residents of a resort town in BC. When Caleb once again took to the road, leaving his family behind. The people there remembered him as being outgoing and friendly enough to sit down with a group of strangers and strike up a conversation, just with anybody. But the other side of Caleb would see him kicked out of every drinking establishment because of his crude and profane behavior. He could go from being sweet and generous to rude and obnoxious at the flip of a switch.
And that's always really scary. And again, speaks to that impulse control.
Mm-hmm. And that impulse control was not helped by his substance use. Between 2011 and 2013, Caleb, now calling himself various other names, made his way through British Columbia and then down the western coastline into California. He traveled through the mountains and then over the border. His migration south was brought on, he said, by it being too cold to sleep in his van in the Canadian winters.
That I can agree on.
Yep.
You would freeze.
He moved along the coastline, finding friends and parties to entertain himself, living off the land and the kindness of others, which he then would pay forward. When he had the opportunity, he would couch surf, and when he wasn't able to, he would just sleep under bridges or on boats. It was this lifestyle that led him to be hitchhiking down Route 99 when he met Jet, and became known through the online video as Kai, the Hatchet wielding hitchhiker.
So by the time he got to California, he no longer had his van. He was now hitchhiking.
Yep.
Okay.
From the original video, other videos were made. It was songified, memed, and retweeted. Kai became famous and started getting noticed on the street. For whatever reason, the video and Kai's charm spoke to people. The idea that a homeless hitchhiker, a person that was not typically regarded with a lot of respect in society, was the unsuspecting hero of the story moved people, and his outlandish and unconventional ways sparked humor and endearment. On the Colbert Report, Stephen Colbert concluded, "For the first time in human history, people are saying, 'Boy, we sure are lucky that that homeless hitchhiker was carrying a hatchet.'"
Which I know there's a lot of debate about the hatchet, but if I was homeless, that doesn't seem like an outrageous thing to be carrying on your person.
No, I don't think so either. It's a useful tool.
For sure.
And when you're homeless, you do have to protect yourself from quite a few things.
You do. And he's just traveled through the BC mountains.
Mm-hmm.
Not even just other things, but animals you might have to protect yourself from, starting a fire, who knows?
Yeah, it's not like he was always in an urban area.
Right.
Kai was such a hot topic on the internet that other media and TV networks wanted a piece of the pie. But Kai was this free spirit and a wanderer with no fixed address, and finding him was super difficult. And it seemed that Kai didn't really grasp why his video was getting so many hits. He had always had difficulty understanding the social norms and understanding why his behavior was funny and odd to other people. Kai has a real problem of understanding other people's behavior and interpreting other people's behavior.
Yeah, I can see that.
So Kai wasn't looking for any more publicity, even though everyone was looking for him. The only person in the media with a way to contact him was the reporter from the original interview. He was getting requests from all over the world to connect with Kai. Since his interview, Kai had been doing pretty well on his own, without doing anything extra for publicity. The sensation created online made Kai recognizable on the street, and people loved interacting with the new celebrity, buying him things and seeking to hang out with the charismatic, carefree guy from the interview. He had people offering to do him favors or a place to stay, all just to be in a picture with him. Kai enjoyed his new celebrity status, and he didn't see much need to do anything more for it. But he did agree to meet with the reporter one more time to do a personal interest piece on himself and his lifestyle. During this interview, the reporter and the cameraman crew started to get a deeper glimpse into Caleb, or now Kai's, life. Kai was very adamant that he was not homeless, but home free.
It's interesting how he said he's home free, not homeless, because he felt like a caged bird. So why would he want to be confined to a space? It totally makes sense that having that happen to him as a child, that he would just want to go wherever the wind would take him.
It does. Kai opened up more about the man he bludgeoned with a hatchet, that he was a messed up guy who had admitted to him that he had raped a 14-year-old girl in the Virgin Islands just prior to him hitting the utility crew.
So that has me questioning, was he acting like some kind of vigilante because he was so traumatized by the sexual abuse that he had experienced? Is that why he was behaving this way?
There's a lot that think that. And there's a lot of comments that Kai makes later, and a lot of the things that he does later on that kind of speak to he was trying to be this vigilante that protected the vulnerable.
Yeah. Like, I went through it. I have to help anybody else who's going through it.
Right. And particularly over sexual abuse. Because it wasn't until the guy started kissing the woman that he jumped out of the car and intervened.
Yeah. And he had just admitted that he had raped a 14-year-old girl in the past. So that must have been so triggering for him.
So then that made that person in Kai's eyes a dirtbag.
Yeah.
And worthy of being hatcheted to death. Because in the interview, he says that he feels no remorse and that he would do it again. And actually, he does say that he hoped he would have done it sooner.
Wow.
Kai shares about his past abuses and the way that he survives on the street, showing off scars from having beaten up someone else to protect another woman. As the camera crew spends more time with him, they learn that he's this talented musician that has a generous, albeit kind of Robin Hood outlook on life. He steals from stores and then ends up giving away all of his loot to people that he deems are less fortunate. Kai has this thing about providing for people that he feels are victimized.
So totally a Robin Hood.
The camera crew also learned that Kai is pretty unpredictable. He would just randomly urinate on things and would frequently skip between moods without notice. One minute being happy and carefree with a love everyone kind of attitude, to the next minute being filled with anger at the injustices in the world, and then sorrow, and then back to crude amusement again. He would just kind of flip through all of his emotions. He would rant and rave about one topic passionately, and then without segue, switch to a completely unrelated one in the next breath. He denied having a family that cared if he was still alive, but all of his family members that gave statements to the media later denied that they didn't care about him. Some say that they had reached out to him, but all had been rejected and had decided to just let Caleb be Caleb.
And again, there's always two sides. Just because they say they love him doesn't mean he felt loved.
That's right. While doing the special interest piece, Kai learned about the Stephen Colbert segment and the opportunity to appear on the Jimmy Kimmel Live show and meet the producers from the Kardashians reality TV show.
That part blew my mind.
But all of this, again, wasn't really Kai's thing. Originally, Kai let the flip of a pencil decide that he would continue on to the beach to smoke weed instead of making celebrity appearances. But he was eventually convinced to go on the show and meet with the producers for a promised limo full of weed. And so it's the Kardashians' producer that gets him to the Jimmy Kimmel show. That's part of their deal.
Okay. Because if the Kardashian producer is wanting to do a show on him, having him go on Jimmy Kimmel is going to help him.
That's right. And so they're all for, hey, we'll work with you guys. We'll bring him from California to the show. And they're kind of entertaining him, schmoozing him all this time, trying to get him to sign a contract.
I wonder how much weed was actually in the limo. Like a limo full of weed? That's a lot of weed.
That is a lot of weed, especially when it wasn't legalized for like another 3 years after this.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Some interesting business tactics.
How do you write that off?
And I do think that there's a lot of question about how the media and TV producers kind of use Kai. And even though they were aware of his mental health illnesses, they didn't seek to get him any help for them. They were trying to exploit him for them.
Oh, yeah, he's a dollar sign.
Yeah, very clearly.
But when you're in that type of industry, that is what it is.
Yeah, that's your moneymaker.
The Kardashians are dollar signs for them.
Mm-hmm.
And if I remember correctly, didn't one of the producers say that they can take basically any family off the street and turn them into a success like the Kardashians?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's all in how they market them.
And edit them.
Yeah.
Which I find so interesting in light of the documentary, because watching the Netflix documentary and then doing the back research on it, there are a lot of things different about Kai than what they presented.
Yeah. And that's why I'm excited you're doing this, because I knew you would really dig for as much information as you could.
Well, and all that digging did turn up a really different view of Kai than what the Netflix documentary showed. But the producers of the show followed through with the limo. I'm not sure if they followed through with the weed, but they definitely followed through with the limo.
Yeah, we won't make any allegations.
They had to drive Kai, though, across the country because he couldn't get on a plane. He didn't have any ID.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. So while they're moving him across country and trying to smooze him, he manages to get kicked out of the Roosevelt Hotel for skateboarding in their swanky lobby and urinated on Julio Iglesias' star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Oh, poor Julio.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so bizarre behavior, right? It's just that impulse control, just, oh, I gotta pee? I'll whip it out and pee on this star on
That's
Hollywood Boulevard. No biggie.
Doesn't matter. No thought to like, now I'm in this great big nice hotel. I should act a different way, try to present myself differently. That just was not Kai. He just couldn't do it, actually.
No.
It wasn't even that he didn't want to try it. I truly believe he could not change his behavior. He could not contain that impulse control.
Yeah, it's like an adult version of a toddler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So just before going on the Jimmy Kimmel Live show, Kai was taken into custody to answer questions about the incident with Jet McBride. The police had been unable to find him until the show's host had posted a message on social media about his upcoming guest. And then the police were like, oh, ding, 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 we know where he's going to be. They come pick him up from the show.
And could you imagine? They're like, oh, he's going on Jimmy Kimmel. Let's get over there.
But they had no idea how to find him after they interviewed him at the scene. But then to get a statement later, they just couldn't find him.
He gave them no contact information.
Well, he didn't have any. It's not like he has a fixed address or he knew where he was going to be.
Yeah. It was just his email address, right? That he had given to the reporter.
Yeah, that's all he had.
Yeah, that's wild. What a carefree way to live.
Mm-hmm. And I think it appealed to a lot of people because there was just no responsibilities associated with Kai's life. If he wanted to go and do something, he just went and did it.
Yeah.
There was no bills to think about or to plan for.
No, it was, I feel like smoking weed and going surfing. That's what I'm doing today.
That's right.
Wow.
Kai gave a statement to the police and then was returned just in time to do the live show. So returned like straight into the green room 30 minutes before the show. The interview was somewhat of a success, based largely on Jimmy Kimmel's quick wit and his ability to steer the conversation. But the producers of the reality show were kind of realizing that Kai was not going to be a subject for TV.
No, he's a loose cannon.
Mm-hmm. The Jimmy Kimmel Live show tried to bring him back to do a segment on movies, but he was too unfocused and too unpredictable. He couldn't even focus through a trailer, let alone a whole movie.
Wow.
After giving the security guard the $500 that Jimmy had given him and an apology for urinating on yet another sign, Kai left the show with a useless contract he signed in hieroglyphics and a happy owner of a new surfboard and wetsuit that Jimmy had given him. And he thought that was like win-win. Instead of looking forward to future opportunities, he could have made so much more money with his own reality TV show if he had just kind of reeled in some of his personality. He was just kind of oblivious to that all. He thought he was on top of the world because he had this new surfboard.
Yeah. And it really speaks to his character where he didn't care about the money. He just, oh, I got $500 here, security guard, here you have it.
Yeah, there was another situation that they had talked about on the documentary where he was staying in the fancy hotel and he just went outside and gave somebody else his backpack because he's like, obviously, I don't need this backpack anymore. Look at the hotel I'm staying in.
Yeah.
So he had this generous personality.
And just no attachment to monetary things.
No, none at all. Over the next few months, Kai would enjoy the new lifestyle his fame brought him. People recognized him on the street and were all too happy to supply alcohol and drugs or a place to stay for the guy that was on the video. His Facebook posts were sensationalized and his way of life was celebrated.
Probably because it's that way of life that people know they can never live, right? As a responsible adult, you can't live that way.
No. But his way of life was precariously balanced between uninhibited and unhinged. And his 15 minutes of fame would run its course. While most people loved his idea of living free with no responsibilities and saying whatever you wanted, most people recognized that there were consequences to doing this. And that's why most people don't live that way.
It's true.
People would soon grow tired of his antics. The reporter Jessup said, quote, "You don't understand what it's like to hang out with this guy. You're trying to keep him out of trouble. You're trying to keep an eye on him. And you're trying to keep yourself out of trouble because he does things that are just so off the wall. He completely lives by the beat of his own drum." A Facebook page that had been formed in Kai's honor that was posting about concerts and events that Kai would be in Fresno actually shut down with a message that said, quote, "We cannot vouch for Kai's integrity towards people anymore." And another post read, quote, "We hope Kai will help himself and best wishes to him. Lesson, disrespect, and unappreciation will get you nowhere.
Ooh.
You are not going to come into our city and think you can run over us with your so-called fame."
Well, they're probably seeing him flip that switch, right? It's not just the guy that you saw in that YouTube video.
Mm-hmm. Apparently, people didn't like his new face tattoo or his new attitude that he deserved special treatment. So Kai never really understood why people were paying so much attention to him. He didn't understand that they were kind of laughing at him in the video, that he was this outrageous guy. He thought that he was really famous and that they liked him just for him. And really, it was the persona that he created during that video that they were after. It wasn't really him.
Which is really sad.
Mm-hmm. But his novelty wore off quickly as these holes in his character started to show.
Well, and that's how you get those sayings about how Hollywood will chew you up and spit you out, right?
Mm-hmm. People were just done with him.
Yeah.
Once they got to know him a little bit better, they recognized all of his mental health issues. They're like, no, this guy is just too much. Just the same way that the producers of the Kardashian show had said, like, no, we thought this guy would be great, but clearly has too many issues.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like some of them were almost exhausted after spending a day with him. He was just so high energy.
Mm-hmm. Kai did keep in touch with the original reporter that had rocketed him to fame, and started to share some of his darker thoughts about people who took advantage of others. He was particularly outspoken about pedophiles. In April, he was interviewed by a California news station, and he talked about being sexually assaulted as a teenager. He told the host that, quote, "I realized I'd never let something like that happen to me again. I'd rather die than let something like that happen to me again." Around that same time, he made a Facebook post about a news article titled, "Is vigilante pedophile hunting a good idea?"
Oh.
And then he asked his followers, "You all decide for me."
Wow. So he definitely has this vigilante mindset and this deep, deep rooted trauma from what happened to him as a kid.
Mm-hmm. When viewed in hindsight, Kai definitely shows a dislike towards any, quote, rich, fat white guys, as he puts it. In his media appearances, social feeds, and comments to friends and reporters, he makes several derogatory remarks about this profile.
So I'm assuming that his attacker fit that profile.
That's my guess. And it seems by all of these comments about these rich, white, fat guys that Kai's philosophy in life have changed a little bit, and that not everyone no longer deserves respect or is worthwhile.
No matter what they do.
That's right.
Yeah.
Rich, white, fat guys are off the invite list for him. On Friday, May 10th, in a Facebook post posted from New York City, Kai shares his first memory of being, quote, in a crib and family fussing over me. But I kept getting told that, quote, I had a demon. I would get locked in a room for 20 hours a day with a little porta-potty camp toilet in the corner of the room. He then goes on to write about having his mouth filled with hot sauce and soap for swearing. And then he signed the post, Happy Mother's Day.
Oh, ouch.
That seems like a direct message to his mom.
Oh, 100% it was.
Yeah.
So he obviously has some deep-seated resentment and trauma from her as well.
Oh, I think so. Because even when he's incarcerated, he refuses to let her come visit.
Huh. So I think with his free-loving spirit, there's got to be something more to what he is saying about his childhood.
Yeah, there are a lot of people that say Shirley gives off the wrong vibes.
She did to me, but I'm not an expert on this case, that's for certain.
The next day, after Kai makes this post, he met Joseph Galfy Jr. in Times Square outside of a Red Lobster on a Saturday afternoon, the day before Mother's Day, in this chance meeting. Joseph, 73 years old, was a practicing lawyer and a former military man who was well known and respected in the close-knit community of Clark, New Jersey. He was a member of a wedding band and a member of the Chamber of Commerce. He was a well-known and connected guy, and he matches the profile that Kai despises.
Ooh, a rich, white, larger man?
Uh-huh. He approached Kai saying, "Are you lost?" The two talked for a little bit, and then it was decided that Kai would accompany him back to his house for a place to stay for the night. On the way back to Joseph's bungalow at 46 Starlight Drive, they discussed construction. Kai claimed to have worked as a carpenter, and Joseph often dealt with construction permits, so they had this kind of common interest area that they could talk about. They went back to Joseph's house and had dinner and several drinks before sleeping in separate rooms. There's been a lot said over Joseph approaching Kai and why Kai would go with him.
It's hard to say. Was he using him for a warm cooked meal and a clean shower? Or was he out to get him?
Maybe. And what the heck is Joseph picking up this guy for?
Yeah, was it really out of the kindness of his heart or did he have ulterior motives?
There's a lot of questions about this interaction.
Because how much age difference is between them? Like 50 years?
Yeah.
So it seems odd that they would have a whole lot to connect and bond over.
Times Square is known to be a cruising station, and young homeless people are often targeted because they are believed to be vulnerable. They are looking for a place to stay or for money, and they're not as well connected as other people and are less likely to raise a fuss about any abuses that they might suffer.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. And we see that in a lot of cases that homeless people can become a target.
They're just that much more vulnerable.
Yeah. And did Joseph do this often? Did he often take homeless people back to his home and give them a meal and a shower and let them spend the night?
Surprisingly, there are a lot of facts missing from the documents about Joseph's lifestyle.
Yeah, just at 73, you're a lawyer. I don't know that that's what you're going to be doing.
Joseph was a 73-year-old gay man, but it didn't seem like that was an open fact in his life. It doesn't look like he had ever been married, and he didn't have any children. At his age and profession, that lifestyle would have been something that was kind of frowned upon, or at least kept a big secret. Neighbors would later say that he did have a houseboy, or some called him an employee, that had lived with Joseph for years, but that he had passed away several years before this, and since that time, Joseph had lived alone. Unknown to a lot of his neighbors, but this man was actually Joseph's partner.
And was a lot younger than Joseph? Okay, so he liked younger men.
Yeah.
So then that does make me question if he was inviting him back to his home, thinking they're going to have some kind of romantic involvement, as opposed to just out of the kindness of my heart. And did Kai know that and was setting him up?
Maybe. I don't know. There are so many questions. There is always the chance that he was just a friendly guy looking for some company because he is older, he lives alone, and Kai would have went with him because Kai was now used to people recognizing him on the street because of his kind of celebrity status. But I do question what 73-year-old is watching YouTube videos about some random hitchhiker with a hatchet. That doesn't seem like those two go together. And so I doubt that he knew his celebrity status.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's hard to say. And Kai, like you said, because people were giving him things, he was used to spending the night at people's homes, so that wouldn't have seemed like such a big deal. So there's just so many questions when it comes to this part of it as to what was Kai's motive and what was Joseph's motive. Because we really don't know. And we would never want to speak badly about a victim, but this motive and with what is about to happen, it really does play a part. And it's unfortunate that we don't really know.
Right. And for whatever the motives were behind the interaction, the decisions made by both parties did have dire consequences. So whatever reason that Joseph was picking up Kai and Kai decided to go with him, the end result was awful.
Yeah.
That night, after going out to eat, they settle into Joseph's house to watch TV and drink beer. Joseph insists that he pour the beer from the bottle into a glass for Kai. After about 5 beers, Kai was feeling really tired. Before going to bed, Joseph asked Kai to shower with him.
So there was ulterior motive.
Yeah, I think it's very clear that Joseph was looking for a hookup.
Yeah, because otherwise, honestly, you would just give this kid some money if you were just wanting to help them out.
Yeah. Kai refused his offer and then went to shower alone before going to bed. The next morning, Kai woke up in the spare bedroom and says that he had this kind of metallic taste in his mouth, a bad headache, and he had stuff on his face that tasted salty. When he looked in the mirror, he saw something on the side of his face. Later, he says that he believes that this was ejaculate that was on the side of his face, but at the time, he didn't really put everything together until what happens next happened.
Can you imagine waking up to that, feeling all groggy, you think maybe you've been drugged, and then to have that on your face?
Right.
Horrifying.
Well, he didn't really know what to think about it or what to do about it. He claims later that he just didn't understand what any of this was or what it meant. And it wasn't until a few days later that he was able to piece it together from fragments of memory.
So the memories were coming back to him.
Mm-hmm. But it wasn't until a few days later that it all started to come back. And for Kai to kind of pass out after 5 beers is a little bit unheard of. He's this heavy drinker. He uses a lot of drugs. And so
he's not that much of a lightweight.
That's right.
So that is suspicious then that possibly Joseph had drugged him in the beer.
Mm-hmm. Those are Kai's claims anyway. Kai left the house that morning to meet up with some friends. Joseph was a nice guy and drove him to the Rahway train station, bought him a ticket, and Kai did hug him that morning and then was on his way. Again, in the documentary, this is one of those points that people point out and say, why would he hug a guy that had just raped him? But there's a lot of behaviors that we do when we've been traumatized. So I don't think that you can make any assumptions on any victim's actions after they've been traumatized.
I was just going to say that could have very well been a trauma response. I just need to be nice to get out of the situation. And he could have still been trying to process what had just happened.
Mm-hmm. When Kai's plans fall through, he needs a place to stay for the night. And he messages Joseph again and asks him for a place to stay. So for the second night, Kai initiates the conversation and asks Joseph to stay at his house again.
And that's tough too, because if you had just been sexually assaulted by someone, would you ask them to come back if you didn't have this ulterior motive of wanting to seek revenge?
Right. Kai later does say that it was because he still didn't fully understand or appreciate what had happened to him the first night.
Yeah, I don't know. If I'm waking up to a suspicious substance all around my mouth, I don't know that I'm going back for more.
Yeah. And so then, if Kai had made that determination that that's ejaculate, then does he go back for revenge?
Right.
Is he acting out those kind of vigilante fantasies of taking revenge?
And he had posted on Facebook even, should I be a vigilante towards sexual predators? Mm-hmm. You guys tell me yes or no.
And then he just happens to end up in the bed of who he deems is a sexual predator.
Yeah. And you know how the internet is. People are going to be like, yeah, man, you're a hero. Get them. They get what they deserve. You know that's what people are going to be commenting and encouraging him.
And then with Kai's inability to interpret conversations and relationships, he wouldn't be able to read into the layers of this is somebody making exaggerated comments. He would look at this as just being a sincere comment that somebody was actually telling him to do this.
Right.
Joseph had no problem picking up Kai for a second night shortly before 6 p.m. He brought him back to the house and fed him homemade hamburgers and again beer. After drinking, Kai claims that he started to feel real tired. The dinner and the theme song of Jeopardy are the last thing he remembers before waking up on Joseph's floor. In different statements, there are contradicting claims from Kai. In the official record, Kai has said that he woke up to Joseph removing his pants, and in other claims, he says that he woke up to find Joseph behind him, grinding and humping him, and that Joseph was on top of him, suffocating him, and he felt like he was going to die. In an effort to save himself, Kai says he started to hit Joseph, and that's where Kai's memory blacks out again. He claims the next thing he remembers is coming to in the parking lot of the White Diamond Diner in Clark around 10 p.m. that night. The people that he had met that night, he had stopped at a 7-Eleven, and in the diner, they said that he did act a little bit dazed. He called his friend, who he was supposed to meet with earlier that day, several times. And when she doesn't pick up, he left a message saying that the place in Newark, which he had mistaken where Joseph lived, he said that place fell through and asked if she could now come pick him up. But this person, she doesn't get her messages, and so he ends up spending the night traveling through train stations. In the early hours of the morning, not being able to get a ride from his friend, Kai returns to the train station to catch a ride to Asbury Park through Long Branch, where he had previously set up a meeting with the woman named Kimberly. She doesn't notice anything off about his behavior other than his normal kind of personality. He's his normal upbeat self, he's posing for photos with other fans, and he has no defensive wounds that the woman noticed. She does notice, though, that Kai has cut his long flowing hair. Once alone, Kai told Kimberly that he had been date raped, but lied to her and told her that he had gone to the police about it, but that they would not do anything because the assailant was an attorney. He also told her that he had awakened to find the man had ejaculated in his mouth, and it was all on the side of his face and on the side of his cheek. So he kind of melds the two stories together in his recounting to Kimberly.
I can see, like, if this is true, I can see why he would feel like the police would not help him, knowing that this man was a lawyer.
Yeah. Kai later said that he didn't go to the police because he feared deportation back to Canada. He wasn't in the States legally, and he didn't want to be sent back. After spending the day in Philadelphia, Kai couch surfs at another fan's house in Glassboro. They didn't notice anything different about Kai's behavior either. He seems to be his usual upbeat, distractible self. Kai then tells everyone on Tuesday that he's off to see a friend in Georgia, so he's skipping out of the state. The same day, Kai made another Facebook post. It read, quote, "What would you do if you woke up with a groggy head, metallic taste in your mouth, in a stranger's house, walked to the mirror and seen cum dripping down the side of your face from your mouth, and started retching, realizing that someone had drugged, raped, and blown their effing load in you? What would you do?"
Oh, that's pretty graphic.
A Facebook friend commented back, "Find them as fast as I could and smash with a hatchet or whatever else I could find." And Kai responded to that saying, "I like your idea."
Ooh. Now, this is after the second time or the first time?
This is after the second time.
Okay.
It's on the 14th.
Okay.
This post is thought to be kind of like an afterthought for Kai, saying that, oh, now that a couple days have passed, here's my motive. I need to explain things.
Right.
So it's kind of like a cover-up.
Yeah, and wanting to maybe feel justified in what he's done.
Now that it's all coming back to him. Because Kai had always posted weird stuff on Facebook that could be really dark, no one really thought too much about this post. They thought he was just being funny about it. While Kai was posting about what to do about his situation and getting advice, police were trying to solve the suspicious death of Joseph Galfy. The day before, around 2 p.m., Joseph's body had been found by police in his master bedroom after a wellness check was called in. He hadn't shown up for court, and that was really unusual for the responsible elderly gentleman. He was found lying face down in a pool of blood in his master bedroom. He was wearing only his socks and underwear. Despite there being no signs of a struggle, Joseph had been beaten ruthlessly. He had 3 skull fractures, 4 broken ribs, and severe bruising. His ear showed what resembled a shoe tread and was almost completely severed from his head.
Oh, that's a brutal beating.
I think it speaks to rage.
Mm-hmm.
The medical examiner ruled the cause of death to be blunt force trauma and later testified that the severity of the injuries to his face, neck, chest, and arms were inconsistent with self-defense because there was no defensive injuries. Joseph was found to have blood and semen on his genitals, and a rape kit was performed on Joseph and was found to be negative. A tox screen was also performed on the victim and was found to be negative.
So was Kai's DNA found at the scene?
They never do DNA testing.
What?
Yeah, we're going to get into that.
Blood and semen, and they did not test it for DNA?
We're going to get into it. There's a lot of things that go wrong with this investigation.
Oh, no.
Which the documentary doesn't touch on at all.
Not to knock the documentary. You should still go watch it.
No, I think everybody should go watch the documentary. It's an interesting take on the case. Police were able to narrow down the suspect list pretty quickly. They found a piece of paper with the name Lawrence Kai written on it and several text messages between Kai and Joseph. The train ticket was also found at the scene and prompted the police to check the surveillance footage from the station, where Joseph appeared to be handing a ticket to him and to hug a guy who, from behind, looked a lot like Kai the Hatchet wielding hitchhiker. Police track Kai down and arrest him under his real name Caleb on May 16th at the Greyhound bus station. And they are immediately suspicious of him because he's changed his appearance. He has on different clothes and he's cut his hair. He gave a statement to police under the influence of 2 grams of marijuana, and in it, he is not overly surprised that Joseph is dead, even though he claims that he didn't know he was dead before he left him. He does admit to hitting Joseph, but it was all out of self-defense because the elderly man was raping him. So he does confess to hitting him. He says that when he left him, he didn't know that he was dead.
And I could actually see that. I feel like he could have went there just to give him a really severe beating and leave. That's why I can't believe that they didn't test for DNA. Yeah. I'm still not over that. That blows my mind.
It's shocking. Wait till we hear a little bit more about the investigation as well. Kai was taken to Union County Jail, and bail was set to $3 million.
Ooh.
Quite a hefty sum for a homeless guy.
Yeah.
But I guess he did have a solid fan base of supporters, so maybe they were thinking that he would be able to raise funds through his fans.
But $3 million? That's a lot.
It is pretty hefty, I thought. There in Union County Jail, in solitary confinement, Kai would wait for his trial.
Well, they put him in solitary.
Solitary confinement was deemed necessary because Kai was considered a suicide risk. On July 17th, he was taken to the hospital for self-inflicted non-life-threatening injuries. Kai would later make posts about how the guards at the facility often drove inmates to attempt suicide, even though he never claimed that personally.
Okay.
It's hard to read through his posts because they're so wild and crazy.
Yeah, but he's claiming that the staff there are abusive.
Over the next 5 years, Kai studied law, and he attempted to dismiss his public defender and requested a change of venue, arguing that Joseph Galfy knew many of the Union County Superior Court judges because of his profession.
Oh, well then it should be moved.
He also filed several motions in his criminal case and filed state and federal lawsuits, both claiming authorities violated his right to due process by destroying evidence and failing to collect evidence that would prove his claim that the victim attempted to sexually assault him.
It's very odd that he's able to study law for 5 years consecutively and get all this knowledge when he can't even sit through a movie.
Yeah.
That's pretty contradicting.
It is contradicting, but in lockup, I believe he's getting some treatment.
Maybe medicated. Gotcha.
If you watch his videos from his Hatchet Wielding Hitchhiker video to the videos he later posts later on about his trial, you can understand him a lot more. He stays on topic a lot more. He's not all over the place. And so it does seem to me like he's been medicated.
Okay. And was he prescribed medication before and just chose not to take it?
I never read anything like that. I know he was in extensive treatment plans. And so I'd imagine that he did have medication prescribed earlier.
Okay.
But that's just a guess. I don't know that for sure.
Yeah, I would assume so if he's in those kind of treatment centers.
All of Kai's claims were denied. And 2 of the judges do end up recusing themselves because of their connection with Joseph. But only 2, and he never gets to change his venue.
That seems wrong.
Yeah, he's tried in the county where the victim practiced law.
Yeah, he's basically going up against this guy's coworkers in a sense.
Originally, there was a lot of hype to free Kai from his supporters. There was a GoFundMe page set up and online stores that sold t-shirts and posters. But as the 6 years wore on, they all kind of disappeared, moving on to the next internet sensation. Kai, or Caleb's family, say they did try to reach out to him, but they were not welcomed. When Kai's trial began in 2019, it was under a strict media ban, and no video reporting was allowed. The judge used the argument that Kai would be obsessed with performing for media instead of focusing on his case. So the judge says he was doing it for Kai's benefit. Kai was charged with first-degree murder. He pled not guilty to that crime. He claimed that Joseph had died while he was trying to defend himself.
This is where it gets so tricky.
The prosecution presented the case that Kai had killed Joseph because he perceived him to be a pedophile that preyed on the young and the helpless. That is why he believed he was in Times Square that day when he was picked up. Kai's view on the world had always been distorted and had become even more so with the drugs and alcohol and the overwhelming attention that he had received for beating a man with a hatchet. They argued that because of his newfound fame, that he had created a vigilante persona that hunted down people that he felt were dangerous. They presented a list of pedophiles that was found in Kai's backpack as evidence of this. They argued that Kai had purposely returned to the house on the second night to murder Joseph in cold blood, and then cut his hair and threw away his phone to evade police detection. The defense argued that Kai had significant mental health issues, including PTSD and bipolar disorder, and that there had not been a proper investigation done at the crime scene that would allow Kai to prove that there were grounds to believe his self-defense claim. There was evidence presented at the trial and brought out afterwards that does support this defense. A rape kit was done on Joseph, not Kai. The blood found on Joseph's genitals was not tested or matched to the victim or to Kai. The dishwasher in the house was run between May 13th and May 15th, while the house was an active crime scene. Inside the dishwasher were cups that Kai claimed Joseph had used to serve the beer in.
Who turned on the dishwasher? What kind of shenanigans was happening there? Oh my goodness.
So, Joseph's brother, the former deputy police chief, was allowed to enter the house during the investigation. He also had suspicions right away that it was probably a drifter that murdered his brother. So maybe Joseph bringing home people from the streets was not an unusual behavior for him, because that's one of the first things that his brother said. He's like, I bet you it was a drifter.
Okay.
So there were also pill bottles found in the fridge, which were not collected or analyzed.
What?
Mm-hmm.
And so was it the brother who ran the dishwasher?
We don't know. There's an investigative report that said the dishwasher was run between this time and this time.
But they allowed the victim's brother, who was a former police chief, so has all this connection with the police, to just enter the scene unattended.
Mm-hmm.
So if there was drugs in a cup and DNA evidence that Kai was there and had been drugged, because his DNA would be on that cup with the said drugs, it got washed away in the dishwasher.
Yep. Beer bottles and glasses were never tested for drugs. They said it was because the way they tested for fingerprints on them was they had to rinse them with water, and so that would hide any of the drug evidence.
Yeah, but you test for drugs first, and then you take your fingerprints.
That's right, but they didn't do that.
I don't have a law degree, and I think I could have figured that out. This is sounding really fishy.
Kai was denied a rape kit and toxicology.
Denied a rape kit?
Yes.
So he requested one to prove that he was raped.
And was denied.
What?
Yeah. He was also denied toxicology, but I don't think that would have been overly helpful, because by the time they had him in custody and by the time they asked for a toxicology report, it was over the 72 hours, which is normally the time that you can pick up the date rape drug in somebody's system.
But then why wouldn't the prosecution want to do that then, so they could prove that there is no drugs in his system? We did it.
That's right.
And
or
it was clean.
To do a rape kit.
Yeah.
And prove that there was no semen from Joseph there.
Oh.
And there was a doctor that Kai claims gave supporting evidence about his possible state of intoxication and timelines to the effect of the date rape drug, but that opinion was not allowed to be entered into the trial or for the jury to hear because they had a conflict of interest with the case. That conflict of interest was a sizable donation to their research from Joseph's estate that was being handled by his brother.
Okay. This totally changes things, Melissa.
Well, it does seem to be this huge smoking gun for a conspiracy. But when I did dig a little bit deeper into this, his brother was following instructions into Joseph's will to pay the remainder of a donation to a research group. So this was already set up before Joseph died. However, there are some reports that this same doctor that received support from Joseph was the doctor that originally denied the rape kit on Kai.
Yeah, this is not sitting well.
They're all buddies, right?
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Not everything can be easily explained away. So there are some really sketchy things that took place with this investigation and that raised some eyebrows for me. And they're brought up in the trial, saying like, why was there no testing for drugs in any of the cups? Why wasn't the DNA tested?
Why was evidence destroyed?
Mm-hmm.
Why was Kai not given those rights to have those tests done on him?
Right. And the defense do bring this up in the case. But the most damaging thing to Kai's defense was Kai himself. He frequently would go on rants and had numerous outbursts. He interrupted the prosecution, the judge, and even his own attorney while he was trying to make solid arguments about the evidence tampering. Kai's behavior was so disruptive that the judge threatened to remove him. And I would assume that any sympathies that the jury had gained during the defense's arguments were soon lost to just the annoyance that they would feel from Kai's constant interruptions.
Yeah, he would come across as a loose cannon.
Mm-hmm.
Did you say that the blood found on Joseph's genitals did not belong to him, belonged to somebody else?
They never tested it at all.
At all? Even
No.
the blood type?
Nope. They didn't test to see if it was the victim's own blood. They didn't test to see if it was somebody else's blood.
But there was no wounds to his genital area to explain blood being there.
No. But it was a very bloody scene. He had been bludgeoned.
Okay. But he had underwear on. So it's not like he's going to get
cast
splatter. Yeah, on there.
That's right. During the murder trial, the jury was instructed that Kai must prove intoxication by clear and convincing evidence.
when I'm not going to give you a tox report, but you have to prove that you were intoxicated.
And in the absence of intoxication, the jury must find a guilty verdict. The trial court further instructed the jury that if Kai could prove intoxication by clear and convincing evidence, then the jury must acquit. So those were the instructions given by the judge. It has been argued by a lot of people that this is the reversal of innocent until proven guilty.
Absolutely it is. We're going to wash the cups that possibly had the poison in it, and we're not going to give you a tox report.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to tell our jurors that this is the evidence that you have to base your decision on.
Right. But the whole thing between innocent until proven guilty is that the onus lies on the prosecution to prove that the person's guilty, not on the defense to prove that they're not guilty.
True. Like, I have no doubt that Kai did beat this man to death.
Oh, he did. He admitted it.
Yeah. Like, that is not even a question. But was it self-defense? And that's what's not given proper due diligence, I think, is exploring that.
Right. On April 24th, 2019, Kai was unable to prove to the jury that he had been drugged and raped. They convicted him of first-degree murder in the death of Joseph Galfy. His family was not present at the trial. Instead, they showed their support to him by going to the West Edmonton Mall to take surf lessons to show their solidarity with him.
Okay.
It's a weird fact. That's why I wanted to put it in there.
Yep. I'm not going to comment.
On May 30th, 2019, Judge Kirsch sentenced Kai to 57 years in prison. He said, quote, "You created this public image of a surfing free spirit, unshackable by the constraints of materialism and consumption. But underneath that free spirit, the jury saw another side of you. You are a powder keg of explosive rage, a cold-blooded, calculated, callous killer." He noted Kai would be eligible for parole around 2061, when he was about 72 or 73 years old. Quote, "which by complete conscience is still younger than Mr. Galfy was when you murdered him." Given a chance to speak, Kai said he had been wrongfully convicted by a system both corrupt and stacked against him. Quote, "Despite the bias of the cronies on the bench, I will overturn your false conviction and your worthless sentence. This has been nothing but a sham trial, and you have railroaded an innocent man. Shame on you."
Whoa.
Given his previous fame for bludgeoning a man and celebrating it, and then beating another man to death, I'm not sure how innocent Kai can actually claim to be, but there are some really big questions about this case.
Mm-hmm.
Even in just the sentencing, 57 years, I looked it up, and the typical sentence for first-degree murder in New Jersey is 30.
And he got 57.
He got 57 in a case where it's pretty questionable whether it was self-defense. And in New Jersey, if you are arguing self-defense against rape, it's not even manslaughter.
And he's getting premeditated first-degree murder.
Yeah.
And 57 years is a long time.
It is such a huge sentence.
Normally, we're upset because they're not getting enough of a sentence. And I do go so back and forth with this case because even just how easily, at the very beginning, Kai was able to just pull out that hatchet and hit a man over the head. No second thought, no regret.
And that's what I mean. He did bludgeon a man with a hatchet without a second thought. So I don't think that he can claim that he's completely innocent.
No, and he did go back the second night to this man. Was he wanting to confront him? Did he mean to kill him? I don't know.
Well, that's what the jury felt, is that he did purposely go back that second night to kill him.
Or did he go back for answers? Because he was just getting memories and bits and pieces. And then if Joseph actually tried to rape him again, then you can see that he would snap and all of a sudden just unleash on Joseph.
Right. There was a lot said in the trial documents about the severity of the beating that he inflicted on Joseph, that was beyond anything that could have been just self-defense. But I do think that if he was suffering from PTSD, maybe he did just snap and could not stop himself.
Yeah. And it's not just PTSD. He's got a lot of other things going on there, I think.
Impulse control being a huge one.
Yeah.
Kai's appeals are ongoing at this time, the most recent one being just decided in January of this year, conveniently around the same time as the Netflix documentary was released.
And it was denied.
It was denied. All appeals have been denied so far. The appeal judges have stated that they have rejected Kai's insistence that he was defending himself through sexual assault because Joseph was an older man, quote, smaller in stature than the defendant, and that the severity and the number of his injuries supporting the jury's conclusions that the defendant knew his actions created substantial risk of death, and that he was aware that death was practically certain to result.
Why don't they just say, because he's a lawyer and his brother's a former police chief, and we're going to keep you locked up for 57 years so you're not going to cause a disturbance in our lifetime of our jobs.
Yeah, so that we won't be around to handle any of the repercussions.
Yeah, and you're probably not going to make it to that age to even get out and us to have to worry about it.
Kai has also filed civil lawsuits against who he feels have conspired against him, and they have all also been denied. Not because there wasn't enough reasonable doubt about the security of the evidence in the case, but for the fact that a civil suit cannot be granted if it is likely to undermine the findings of a criminal court decision. Kai is currently serving time in New Jersey State Prison in Trenton and continues to claim that it was self-defense.
And even if it wasn't self-defense in the moment, was he overtaken by the trauma of it? If he was assaulted that first time and just was overtaken, like, I'm so shocked that there was no investigation into, like, psychological testing to see if he was even in the right mind when this happened.
His defense lawyer did bring up his PTSD as a defense, but the jury didn't buy it.
Because of his crazy outbursts.
And that is the bewildering and crazy case of the home-free, possible vigilante dirtbag that killed an elderly man in self-defense.
Wow. Okay, if Joseph is totally innocent in all of this, Kai, super dirtbag, right? He just fit his profile, took it out on him, revenge killing from his attacker.
I do find it very interesting that Joseph fits the type of character that he villainizes. That's a rather convenient coincidence that he just happens to go to a house of a guy that he already dislikes.
Right. So why even go with him in the first place?
Right. That seems suspicious to me.
But was he just using him for drugs, alcohol, food, a warm place to stay? It's just so hard to say. I feel like there's so many unanswered questions, and I don't feel like the process of his trial was done on the up and up.
It doesn't seem like that. So I went into lots of huge rabbit holes with this case about the corruption that's found in New Jersey, and particularly in their county.
Oh, and I think that happens, unfortunately, more often than we think.
It did have me believing in conspiracy theories, which usually I'm not a huge supporter of. But this case, there are so many questions.
I think there's enough holes poked in this case that somebody somewhere needs to look back into this. Yeah. I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve to be jailed or that he is a threat to society. I'm not saying that that's the case, but I don't feel like he was given a fair investigative trial.
I do feel that he was a vulnerable member of society that didn't have the same protection as other people would have.
Or even the capacity to deal with the things that were happening. He was never treated in a successful manner for that. He even said in a lot of those treatment places, he was abused further. That is wild. Well, I knew you would do it justice, Melissa. Thank you for doing this case because you brought in a lot of extra information and I'm still not 100% sure how I feel about this one.
No, and that's why I want to take it to our listeners. So if you have an opinion, share it with us on our Facebook or Instagram. We want to hear what other people think about this. Are you as conflicted as Christy and I are? Or do you have it all figured out? Let us know.
And let us know why. Because we honestly really value your guys' opinions when you share them with us.
And don't forget to check us out next week when Christy will bring you another case.
Until then.
See ya.
Bye.
You can't laugh while we're silencing.
Okay. You can't laugh while we're silencing. We're trying to get some dead air.
It's okay. Say whatever you want to say, and I'll edit. And when his parents divorced, his dad lost the...
What did his dad lost his speaking ability?
Yeah. So on the Jimmy Kimmel during the Jimmy to appear on the Jimmel in the close note. No, in the close knit.
I thought you were talking about a city, Kleist note. I was like, where's that?
Okay. The appellate. And it seems by this time, something.
What does it seem? What does
Just
it seem,
give me
Melissa?
a minute. I know what comment I want to make, but
it seems like you can't.
So yeah.
You can do it.
Another Sound Off Media Company podcast.